Can everyone see me okay? We're good? Sorry, this is way over here. Okay, so let's pick up from where we left off last time. Thank you very much for joining us. To everybody. Big zechut to learn with you the Shabbat. Very important subject to learn. And Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. So last time we discussed the idea of what is a melacha. How do we know what is forbidden to do on Shabbat? We spoke about the concept that we learned it all from the whatever was done to build the Mishkan. That's the way Rashi learns. And it's very important to understand, we spoke about the idea that every labor that was done in the construction of the Mishkan was premeditated, which means they intended to do it. They had in mind to do something, and they accomplished it. So for example, I think we spoke about the fisherman who was catching the chilazon fish / snail that lives in the water. If you want to do that, you got to make, again, why do they need that? They needed that for the blood of that snail, which has a blue color. And they would use that to make the tchelet, the color turquoise. They would put wool and different materials in it, and that's how they would make that color. So in order to catch it, you got to trap it, first of all. You have to take a net. How do you have a net? Oh, you have to take different strings and you have to tie them together. You have to maybe weave certain things together and you have to make for yourself a net. Then you have to trap that fish or snail, catch it, and you have to kill it, take out the blood, squeeze it out. So these are all different melachot that are involved in the creation of the color turquoise, right? In order to get that color. So therefore, all these melachot are forbidden. But the point that I'm trying to bring out is that the melachot that we're dealing with are all premeditated. You had in mind to sew. You had in mind to weave a net or to tie strings together to create a net. Then you had in mind to trap. And then you had in mind to squeeze out the blood from this thing. So each step is something that you had in mind to do. Right? That's very important to be aware of. So if we need more chairs, welcome.
Someone's car is on outside across the street, the minivan.
Yeah, that's
on.
He's on.
Okay.
Okay.
If you can have a couple of chairs in there, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Perfect. So now, what happens if, let's say, I do something, hello, welcome, Chaba. What happens if, let's say, I do something which results in this act, right? This is a review from last week. It results in a melacha, but I had no intention to do it whatsoever, right? So for example, I am, like we spoke about, walking on grass, right? We said that this is a great example because walking on grass could be something that makes a hole in the grass. Making a hole in the ground is the melacha of choresh, right? Which means to plow, and doesn't mean what's it called? Choresh sabzi and whatever it is. Gourmet sabzi. Anyway, doesn't mean that. It means plowing, right? So over here, the idea would be that by me walking on the grass, I'm making a hole. Now, is that okay or is that not okay? Well, the first step is it like what they did in the Mishkan? Everything in the Mishkan was premeditated. They had in mind to dig a welcome. They had in mind to dig a hole, and then they dug that hole. Over here, does this person have in mind to uproot grass from the ground? Not at all. What does this person have in mind to do? This person has in mind to walk. I'm walking on the grass. Am I trying to uproot it? No. Did it result in it being uprooted? Yes. So let's ask ourselves, is that like what they did in the Mishkan? The melacha of making a hole in the ground or uprooting the grass, which could very well be a melacha. Why? Because let's say I want to plant a seed in the ground. How do I do that? I have to dig a hole in order to plant that seed. But over here, am I trying to dig? Am I trying to uproot grass from the ground? No, I'm trying to walk. So we said that for that reason, it is permissible. Why? Because it is not like what they did in the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, they had in mind to do a melacha to accomplish something. The guy is sewing things together to make a net. He's tying strings together to create something. It's not that he, by mistake, happened to do it. It's intentional. But over here, whatever is being done is totally unintentional. Who remembers what that's called? Let's go. Who's got it? What? No, so this shgaga means that you actually intentionally did a melacha. No. This is before psikresha. What's that called? The step before. No. Very good. That's what this is not. This is not melechet machshevet. In the Mishkan, it was melechet machshevet. It was premeditated. It was intentional. But over here, me uprooting grass when I'm walking on the grass, is that intentional? Is that on purpose? It's not intentional. It's not on purpose. So what is it? It's not b'diavad. It's lechatchila. I'm allowed to do it. What's it called? It's called davar she'eino mitkaven. You must. I cannot emphasize enough. We're learning the law. You said that? I'm sorry, I missed it. Sorry, Mikila. You must know that line by heart. Who said this, by the way? Who is the author of Davar She'eino Mitkaven Mutar? Let's go. Very good. The great author of the Zohar Kadosh, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, is the one who got up and said that Davar She'eino Mitkaven Mutar. Okay? Guys, you have to have that on your fingertips. It has to flow. That's what I'm doing. You must know this. Very important. Okay. Davar she'eino mitkaven mutar. Now, davar, something she'eino mitkaven that you did not mean to do. You did not have in mind for this melacha to take place. That is permissible on one condition. What's the condition? Remember, this is a review from last week. I have to know that you know this. This is a review from last week. But what? What's the condition? Who has it? Let's go. I heard somebody say it before. Yes. Let's go. What does that mean?
If you know for a fact
If you know for a fact, that's right. You know for a fact that it's going to happen, it's asur, right? So that you are allowed to do something when you don't have in mind the melacha, that's permissible when it's not guaranteed that the melacha will happen. So again, example, I'm dragging a chair across the grass, okay? And as I drag the chair across the grass, it makes a furrow in the grass. Making a furrow in the grass on Shabbat is forbidden. You cannot make a furrow because that's plowing, like we've been talking about, melechet choresh, right? Okay, that's a problem. But over here, am I trying to make a furrow? Is it premeditated? Is it something I intend to do? No. What am I doing? I'm dragging a chair. Why am I dragging a chair? Because I want to sit close to my friend. I'm dragging a chair. I'm not making a furrow. It happened to be that me dragging a chair resulted in making a furrow in the ground. Is that okay? Yes or no?
No.
So the answer is yes. What? On one condition, though. If it's not a, you said it? It's not a psikresha. If it's a psikresha, which means, if let's say that I know that this chair is so heavy that there isn't a shadow of a doubt that I am going to make a ditch in the ground. I know for a fact, there's no question about it. 100% it's going to happen. Now it's forbidden because it's called a psikresha. It's as if I had it in mind. It's as if it becomes intentional. Since you know that that's going to be the result and there's no question about it, it's intentional. Is it clear or no? 100%? No, not clear?
I don't get what you said according to this chair. I don't.
Okay. There are two types of chairs. There are light chairs and there are very heavy chairs.
It's very heavy and you drag it.
If it's a light chair, so then there's a question. Will my dragging of this chair create a furrow in the ground, yes or no? If the answer is I don't know, maybe yes, maybe no, and you're allowed to drag the chair. Why? Because you don't have in mind to make a furrow, and you don't even know if it will. Maybe yes, maybe no. If it does, did I have it in mind? No. Did I intend for it to happen? No. So therefore, it's already not like how they built the Mishkan. Remember, all the labors of Shabbat come from the construction of the Mishkan, and every single thing they did to build the Mishkan was done intentionally. Is that clear? So here, If I'm not doing it intentionally, then it's okay. On one condition, though. It can only be assumed that I didn't mean for it to happen if I didn't know whether it would happen or not. But if I know for a fact that it's going to happen, you can't say that I didn't intend on it because you knew it's going to happen. You understand? So therefore, it depends. If it's a chair that's light, welcome, Ruchaba. There's a seat over here, or in the back, I think there's another seat. So if you knew that it's going, if it was a light chair, and therefore maybe it'll make a ditch, maybe it won't make a ditch, then we say it's okay. Because even if it does happen, you didn't know that it was going to happen. It was a maybe. It's very heavy. If it's 100% going to make the ditch, there's no question about it. Then we say, we know you knew that it was going to happen. So therefore, we view it as if you intended for it to happen. The example that was given was the case of the chicken that the guy wanted to give his child a toy. And what he did was he didn't have a toy, but he had chickens. So he went over to a chicken and he chopped off the head of the chicken and said to his kid, look, here's a great toy. It's a little bit of a weird thing to do, but back in the day, they didn't have as many things as we do. So it could be a little bit more plausible for back then. So this fellow did that. And now they say to him, hey, you just violated Shabbat, you killed an animal. He says, I didn't mean to kill the animal. I didn't have in mind to kill an animal. I had in mind to take the head and give it as a toy to my son, which is absurd. Because if you know good and well that chopping off the head of the chicken is going to kill it. So therefore we say that is something for which you are held accountable because you know that that's going to take place. Whenever you know that the Melacha will indefinitely result by the other action that you're trying to do. So even though that's not your full intention, but we say, look, you knew it was going to happen, so it's forbidden. The name of that is 2 words, psik resha, chop off the head. You can't chop off the head of the chicken and expect it not to die. You know it's going to die. And you're playing games if you think otherwise. So therefore, you're held accountable. Clear or no? This is all just review from last time.
Separation means you have a doubt or you don't have a doubt.
Separation is when there's no doubt at all that this melacha will happen. So let's go back to walking on the grass, okay? You want to walk on the grass on Shabbat. You want to cut through the yard, walk on the grass, and we know you're not allowed to uproot grass from the ground on Shabbat. Is it allowed? The answer is 100% allowed. No problem. Why? Because walking on the grass is not necessarily going to uproot it. But then there's a lady that she wears, 8-inch heels, right? She wears tremendous heels, right? So now she knows that whenever she walks on the grass, boom, there's going to be a whole smack straight in the ground. No question asked. Definitely going to happen. Can she walk on the grass on Shabbat? No.
I never thought of that.
She's got to take those shoes off, put on her, slippers or whatever she wants to put on, and then go on the grass. Why? How are you going to do it? Is it clear or no? I mean, it's pretty obvious that that's going to happen, no? Would you agree? I mean, I'm thinking, I don't know, I've never worn them, but.
So if she has no way of getting
What?
into the shore, let's say, because there's snow on the sidewalk or something, and she has to go through the grass, she has to switch her shoes.
So again, it all depends on one question. Is it a secret or not? Is it going to happen for a fact? Yes or no? If the answer is maybe, she doesn't need to switch anything. If the answer is yes, it's definitely going to happen, then she can't walk there.
What about strollers?
They go home. What?
Strollers.
Strollers. So strollers don't uproot. Strollers press down on the ground, the Gemara says. They push down, they don't uproot. So it's okay.
But what if the heels uproot?
Heels don't sink into the ground. Aren't they pointy? I'm assuming heels are pointy. Aren't they pointy? What? They go into the ground. They sink in, right? Okay, so there you go.
But sometimes yes, sometimes no.
So then I take it back. If the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no, then it's allowed. Because maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't happen. But if the answer is that it will always happen, then you can't do it.
But what's the melacha? Like, I
Digging
get digging. So
Dig-
to make a hole into.
is called melechet choresh, to dig in the ground, to plow, the melacha of plowing. Now you have a hole that you are allowed to go ahead and put a seed, or not allowed. You are now able. You have a hole that's ready for a seed to be placed there, and you can cover it up and plant, which you didn't have before. So again, I'm just trying to give you an example of what a psik ratio would be. Again, I don't know the exact circumstances. It might be different every time. Could be some grass is very hard and some grass isn't, and a heel wouldn't. I don't know the exact details. I'm just trying to give you the understanding of what's going on. If you can assess the situation and you know that the heels will sink into the ground, then can you actually wear it? No. Okay, now, this is an interesting thing. It's an interesting discussion. I'm just giving it to you as an example because there are times, now that we're talking about the subject, there are times where it would be permissible. There are lots of different factors involved. I don't want to get too detailed, but you're going to ask me about the following scenario. Somebody's making a party in his backyard or a sukkah on the grass, and you want to sit down at the table, and you know that you sit down in the chair and boom, you sink. So that makes holes, right? So the answer has to do with another factor that I would like to introduce to you now. The next factor we need to talk about is called shinui. Shinui means a change, something that is a deviation from the normal way of doing the melacha. This is very important because the reason is the first couple of shiurim we have to talk about the basic stuff about the laws of Shabbat so that you have an understanding of what's going on, so that you get what I'm saying when we talk about the future halachot. So right now we need to talk about what's called shinui. Shinui is a change. The melacha that was done in the Mishkan, or the melachot that are the derivatives of the melachot from the Mishkan, they're all done in a certain way. For example, let's say the wool that was needed to make those curtains. How did they get the wool off the animals? They have to do the melacha of shearing. It's called gozez. They have to go to the wool. They have to shear the wool off the animal. So we can't do certain things on Shabbat because that's similar to shearing. For example, we can't clip our nails on Shabbat because that's called removing something from our own body. We can't cut our hair on Shabbat. Same reason. Just like you can't shear the wool off the animal, you can't clip your nails. You can't take hair off of your body on Shabbat. These are forms of the melacha of gozez, shearing. Now, shearing was done using a vessel. The way they sheared the wool off the animal in the times of the Mishkan was they took, maybe it was a pair of scissors or maybe it was a knife of some sort, but it was some type of a vessel. If, let's say, somebody were to go over to a sheep and would simply pluck a hair out, so that would be gozez, but it would be not the normal way of doing gozez. It would be gozez with a shinui. It would be gozez in a weird way. It would be gozez, it would be shearing in a strange way. It's important to be aware that the Torah did not forbid doing the melacha in a weird way. So that means that on a Torah level, I can go over to the sheep and I can pluck a hair or pluck the wool off with my hands because that's an abnormal way of doing it. Similarly,
Wait, say that again.
I could go over to a sheep. Again, now just pay careful attention. This is what we're talking about now is on a Torah level. The rabbis forbade this. We're going to explain that shortly. But from a Torah perspective, I can go to the sheep. I can remove the wool from the sheep on Shabbat. No problem. Why? Because it's being done in an abnormal way. It's a deviation from the normal way of doing it. So that would mean, let's say, if I take a hair off of my head, boom, like that, or if, let's say, I peel or bite a nail off of my finger, according to the Torah level of the law, I am allowed to do that on Shabbat because it's only prohibited when it's being done with a vessel. Okay. Now, the rabbis stepped in. They said you're not allowed to do a melacha on Shabbat, even if it's being done with a shinui. So rabbinically, it's prohibited. Now remember, when something is rabbinically prohibited, it's just as severe because whatever the rabbis say, we all have to listen to what they say too. The biggest proof is Hanukkah candles and Purim when we read the Megillah. Why? Because what do we say before we light Hanukkah candles? We say, Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner Chanukah. What is the translation of that? Blessed are you, Hashem, Master of the universe, who sanctified us with His commandments and has commanded us to light Chanukah candles. And I ask all of you, where did Hashem command us to light Chanukah candles? If you look in the whole entire Torah, you will never find one place that Hashem told us to light Chanukah candles because Chanukah came much after the Torah was given. And the same thing applies to Purim. The same thing applies to Hallel that we say on Pesach and all the holidays. Never says anywhere to say these things. These things all came from the rabbis. What the Torah does tell us, Lo tasur min hadavar asher yagidu lecha yamin u'smol. Do not stray from what the rabbis tell you, left or right. So because the Torah tells us that, when the rabbis tell us to light Hanukkah candles, we say, well, the Torah told us to listen to the rabbis, so it's Hashem telling us to light Hanukkah candles. You understand? So when the rabbis tell us don't do something that is prohibited on Shabbat in the form of a shinui, it's Hashem telling us not to do that, right? It's important to be aware of that as well. But the difference is that when there are multiple factors, like for example, if let's say that to begin with, this melacha is being done in the form of a shinui, it's weird how this is being done. So if to begin with, it's only derabanan, and let's say that you don't even have it in mind. Let's say that you only have in mind to do something else. It's just a psik reisha that this is going to happen. But what's going to happen? Only something that is prohibited rabbinically. So then there's room for leniency. Okay? That's where the rabbis would tell you, look, in this case, there's room to be lenient because the whole thing to begin with is something we made up. Well, if you don't do it exactly in the normal way and you're doing it in a way that you didn't even have it in mind, there are mitigating factors that could allow the rabbis to be lenient in certain cases. So I want you to know about these factors. So first of all, we spoke about davar she'eino mitkaven, we spoke about psik reisha, now we spoke about shinui. I'll give you an example just to get an idea of shinui. You're not allowed to go to an apple on the tree and pluck the apple off the tree on Shabbat. That's the melacha of harvesting. So what if I go and I say, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I know about this rule, but I'm hungry. So I'm going to go to the apple while it's still on the tree and take a bite. Right? So that would be the melacha of harvesting, but I'm doing it with a shinui. Right? So that's going to be forbidden rabbinically, not midoraita, but midorabanan. Is the concept of shinui clear? I'll give you the most common case where shinui is used in a stage of just, you have no other choice.
A baby.
I'm not going to go there. Something maybe a little more common. You go over to somebody's house for Shabbat, okay? You go to somebody's house for Shabbat. You need to use the restroom, and then you realize, they don't have any pre-cut tissues or pre-cut toilet paper. And then you say to yourself, what do I do now, right? So that's where shinui would come in, right? So in this case, listen, you're not gonna walk around like that, right? So you have to do something. So the answer is you use the toilet paper, but you don't cut on the lines. You cut it with a shinui, your elbow, your foot, your finger, something, odd. That way, you're not violating an isur d'oraita, and the rabbis would be lenient in a case like this because it's what we call kavod habriot. It's the human dignity of a person that they need to be clean.
I have a question.
Clear?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how come with the example with the heels, isn't that a shinui?
Oh, very good. That's a great question. That is a very good question. I think that your question is correct. It's a shinui, and it's a psik reisha, probably the lo nichale. That example might actually be okay. So that example, you're right. There are some factors. That's why I wanted to explain this concept, and that's the reason for there are a lot of mitigating factors here. It's not on your own property. There's a whole lot of things why that might actually be okay to walk with the heels on somebody else's lawn or something like that.
So what would be an example of secret that's not a shinui?
Secret that's not a shinui could be me opening the door to the refrigerator and the light bulb is on. Right? So I open the door to the fridge, the light bulb is on, right? And I didn't have in mind to turn on the light bulb. I want to get my milk out of the refrigerator, but inevitably the light bulb will turn on. That's just what it is. And it's not a shinui, that's how you do it every time.
Right.
So
Right?
you can keep opening the door.
What's that?
No, I'm saying that's no.
What's that?
You can't open it again.
So you would not be able to open. You would need to get a goy to do it, right?
You can't close it.
What?
You can't close it, right?
You'd be stuck. You'd have a problem. You- What? If he's really, really, really little, then he doesn't understand. Like that little, like very little.
Like two.
Yeah. Around, yeah, like that.
my 2-year-old.
Okay, so these are important concepts that I wanted to explain to you. Another important concept that we need to talk about is when you don't have in mind anything at all. For example, let's say that you did not intend to do anything whatsoever. You intended to walk by the room and totally by accident, your shoulder hit the light. You had nothing to do with that at all. That's a new level. That's called mitasek. Mitasek means mitasek. It means that you didn't have in mind anything whatsoever. So for example, I see a tomato on the floor and I want to pick it up. And I'm picking it up and I didn't realize, but it was still attached to the ground and I just uprooted it. The Gemara calls that mitasek, right? So because I didn't have in mind to do any melacha whatsoever, right? So that again is not really so relevant to us because usually we don't intend on doing things that we don't intend on doing. You know what I'm saying? It's just important to know that if, let's say, you walk by the light and you happen to turn it on, that is not something that we would view as melacha at all. Yes.
Sorry, we have this problem a lot because when we walk home from our mom's house, the guy across the street has a sensor.
Right. Oh, so now it's a different story because now you know about it. And now you know that that's going to happen. So now it becomes the level of secretion. Okay. So let's talk about one more thing. Now that you asked the question, there's something that mitigates psikresha too. Remember, we said psikresha is when it's so 100% going to happen that we view it as if you had it in mind, right? Okay. What if that which takes place is so irrelevant to you that it can't be that we would say you had it in mind because it's something that you don't desire at all? For example, let's say that light would light up on a street that is very well lit. There's tons of light. You could see very well, but it happens to turn on when you walk by, right? So in that case, we would call that psikresha de lo ichpat le, which means it's a psikresha that you could care less about. It doesn't affect you at all because you have light anyway. As opposed to, let's say there isn't a single light on that street. You can't see where you're going. You walk by and boom, there's light. Now you see everything very clearly. So that light affected you, it helped you. So that psikresha is good for you, it benefited you. And you walked by it and you knew it was going to happen. So therefore, that's a problematic one. You understand? So psikresha de lo ichpat le makes it a much lower level. When let's say the street is totally well lit and you could see, so then the fact that light turns on doesn't mean much to you because you could see anyway without that light. So that psikresha is a lower level. It would only be rabbinic. And if you have no other way around, then the rabbis would allow you to do that.
My neighbor's light also turns on if we pass it. Like
Okay.
a certain way. If we go from the back door, it turns on. His sensor
One more
light.
time.
And it's very dark in our house and his light is everything.
So
But we don't do it on purpose. It's just
but you know what's gonna
if
happen.
I move like a centimeter this way, it will turn on. Like if I'm coming home,
Okay, so that's a different story. So now you're saying you don't even know whether it's going to turn on or
I
not.
don't know what angle it turns
Okay.
on.
Okay, so that already is called davar she'eino mitkaven, because you don't know whether your movement over here will turn it on or not.
Mhm.
That's something else. Here I'm talking, the case that we're originally talking about is you know it's going to turn it on. Sigresha. Here, maybe yes, maybe no. Turned on? Turned on. You didn't have it in mind. You didn't know that that's going to happen. Understand? So, okay. All right. So right now, we're laying down the groundwork for all Hilchot Shabbat. I know that this stuff is tedious, but it's important for you to understand the rules that we will be learning. Okay. So these are the initial things that I wanted to talk about. Let's start our first Melacha. What time is it? We have time. Let's go. Okay. So let's begin. Shem Hashem Na'aseh v'Natzliach. Melechet Zorea. Melacha number 1. Yes, before we start, yes.
So what if it's supposed to do? She knows for sure that it's gonna go on and it's a very dark street and she has to leave the house.
So maybe before Shabbat, put your own light there so that you can see anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this light doesn't do anything for you. So you have more leniency.
If you go to a car and when you go to the bathroom and you know that the light is gonna be turned on. What we should do? We can use the bathroom or no?
Walking into that bathroom, you're saying?
Some cars then we
They go on automatically?
Yeah, the light is
So better to go to a different bathroom.
No.
What?
I think it's little kids.
What?
I think it's little kids.
How about
So-
if they don't know?
So first of all, you should know you're allowed to, the kid can go, let's say it's number 1, they can go on the grass. It's not a problem.
Oh, yeah?
What? I mean,
Isn't it
at least as
watering the
far as
grass?
Shabbat is concerned. What?
It's not watering the grass.
So right, so it's not called watering the grass because it's not going to make it grow. That's the thing. If it was like water would make it grow, that would be a problem. But if it's this, so it's a real question. By the poskim talk about that exact question. So they say it's fine because it won't actually make it grow. That's a good point. Clear? Yes.
Sorry, just a clarification on the shinui. So we said Doraita, technically there is no prohibition. And then the Rabbanan comes and puts it, says we
Yes.
shouldn't use it.
Yeah.
Now we're saying there's examples that we can use it. Like how do
Yes.
you know?
There will be, correct. That's a great question. The answer to that is that it depends on the melacha. Sometimes the melacha has certain leniencies that with a shinui it will be permissible and sometimes not. So we're going to see that example coming up as we go along. But it's not like a general rule for everybody. For all the melachot, it's specific to certain melachot. That's one of them. Okay, that's an important halakha to know. It comes in handy. Okay, fine. Next. So we're starting with the first melacha, melechet zorea. Zorea means planting. That's melacha number 1 of the 39 melachot. Zorea means when a person does anything to help the growth of a tree, aid in the growth of a plant or a tree in any way whatsoever, that is called the melacha of zorea. So obviously planting a seed in the ground is zorea. Planting a tree in the ground is zorea. If you decide you want to grow that avocado core, they do that in the water, they put those sticks inside and they make the avocado into a tree, that's great. Can't do that on Shabbat, right? Anything that helps the growth of the plant. Let's say you have a plant inside of your house, it's not getting enough sunlight. You take it and you put it by the window so it gets more sunlight. That's helping the plant grow. That's zorea. Can't do that on Shabbat. You want the plant, if you're doing anything for the plant, you're opening up the window so the plant gets air, that would be zorea. It's all part of this melacha. Even helping a tree to grow through pruning a tree. Usually we don't do these things, but it's important to know. A lot of common cases come up. So let me give you a couple of examples. First of all, let's say you want to water your plants on Shabbat. Go outside, water the plants. You cannot do that, right? Can you have a sprinkler system running from before Shabbat? The answer is yes. Why? Because if the timer has it on before Shabbat, so you did the melacha before Shabbat, it happens to turn it on Shabbat, but you could have that's okay. Because your sprinkler system, in the same way that your timers would turn on the lights in your house, the timers would turn on your sprinkler system. Some poskim say it's proper if you live in a place where people might be concerned that you are turning on your sprinklers on Shabbat, to have a little sign saying that these sprinklers are on a timer. Usually speaking, I think in our neighborhood, Most of the sprinkler systems are already on timers. Everyone knows they're on timers. So I don't think it's that much of a concern. But if you believe that it is a concern, don't let people think you're doing it on Shabbat. Yeah.
Is the order you're going in with the actual order?
I'm going in the order of the 39 melachot. This is number 1. We're starting from the ground up. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So it's better not to put your sprinklers on?
So no. So I'm saying you could have your sprinklers on a time. Well, first of all, you could leave your sprinklers on from before Shabbat. That's no question. That's explicit. But even if, let's say, they're on a timer and they will be popping up on Shabbat morning, and everyone will see it, that's technically okay because you set it before Shabbat, which that's a rule on Shabbat. Whenever you start a melacha before Shabbat, that melacha can continue on to Shabbat. We'll talk about some rules about cooking with in that area, but that's the general rule. Yeah.
So if you need to move a plant because you just need the space, but
Great question.
the counter you put it on happens to have more sunlight hitting it.
Great question. That's great. So that would be something which we would say is not a problem because you are not moving it in order to give it sunlight. Just happens to be a by the way type thing, which is not something which would be midoraita, and therefore it's okay.
But it's
That's
not,
not secretion.
That's a good question. That's what I was trying to answer by saying that it wouldn't be the whole melacha over there to begin with would probably not be midoraita because it's just like giving it sunlight, which is not as severe as planting a seed or planting a tree, just giving it light. So it just would be like a derabanan thing, and she doesn't even have it in mind, so therefore it would be okay.
but what's the Zorea? What do you mean the?
What I mean,
What's the Zorea part? Planting.
meaning
is plant,
even if let's say you were putting it by the window
right?
purposely for the sake of getting it to grow, probably that would not be deraita. That would only be derabanan. So when you don't have it in mind, that would be okay.
I don't, why is that Zorea?
Is there right to the actual?
Because
act?
derabanan is actually when you plant it in the ground. Welcome. Deraita is when you actually like do the act of planting or you help it directly to grow. The av melacha would be like when you do something directly to the item to help it grow.
So the Zoraita Melacha is the
Yeah,
Av Melacha,
correct.
and then this is the.
This is not a Torah. This is not even the right. That's more like the Rabbanan. But Marit Ayin, exactly what we were saying before, that the sprinkler system, if people are thinking that you turned it on, then you have to put a sign there that people should know you didn't turn it on Shabbat. But I think most of our community, they have it on timers anyway. So I don't think anyone would think you turned it on Shabbat. Yeah.
If the gardener come on holiday,
Uh-huh.
usually they don't come on holiday, this what happened.
Yeah.
You should ask him to leave.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell them not to work on. Yeah. Correct. Sure. Okay. Tell him before the holiday not to come.
Made no mistake.
Yeah.
They come on early.
What?
They come on early.
Okay. So yeah. So if they show up, tell them that today's not the day. Okay. But you asked about moving a plant, and I want to address that. Moving a plant could be a big problem on Shabbat. If your plant has a hole on the bottom, you should not move it on Shabbat. You know, some plants have the potted plants. Some of them have a hole on the bottom. If it has a hole on the bottom, the halacha views it as being attached to the ground. Yes. In many, many different areas of halacha, it's brought down, it's considered to be attached. It's getting nourishment from the ground. Yes. So therefore, when you move it, it's like, in a sense, uprooting it from the ground. I'll give you another example. Let's say you have a plant that's outside hanging from your porch or something like that, okay? And you want to take it and put it closer to the ground. The halacha holds that you're not supposed to do that because that's considered taking the plant and giving it a stronger level of nourishment. Very interesting halacha that comes up over here.
Can I ask you a question?
1 second. I want to just get it clear for you. I saw this halacha in Rabbi Ribiat. I want to just make sure that I'm telling you. Right, let's take a look at this. I'll find it for you. I'll get back to you. Hashem. Okay. Where is this? Okay, let's talk about some other important halachot. We'll take questions shortly, okay? All right, I want you to be very clear on these things. Sometimes a person could be eating something outside, let's say an apple core, maybe some figs. You could be eating things, seeds, and without paying attention, the person simply throws it on the ground. If it's the kind of place where these things can grow, like for example, if it's an orange, so it's not growing in New York, right? But let's say it's figs or it's grapes or it may be an apple core, which these things do grow here. What? Yeah, if these things do grow here and you just threw it on the ground, you may have just planted on Shabbat. That's a problem. You should not do that, okay? You have to make sure that the best thing to do would be to pick it up if you can, depending on whether or not it's muktzeh, which is another question. If let's say there's still some apple left that you can bite on it, then it's not muktzeh, you can pick it up. But if it's totally just seeds, then already it's muktzeh, you can't even do anything. After Shabbat, go pick it up. But the point is, don't throw these things on the ground because you may have just been planting on Shabbat. The Ramah says a person should not take a cup of water and drink the water over grass. You should have a table or something so that in the event that it spills on the table, not onto the ground. Okay, so ideally, don't drink water outside over grass. You could have something that doesn't cause grass to grow, like let's say, I don't know, Coca-Cola, I don't think coffee, stuff like that. It won't make the grass grow, I would assume, some maybe whiskey or something. But water you should not drink over grass. Okay, but over a table would be okay. It could be that coffee is water-based. I don't know if it would make a difference. Maybe it's still a problem. But something that definitely wouldn't make the water Coke as well. Maybe whiskey, that's, I guess it's also water-based. Something that you know for a fact that wouldn't make the grass grow. Okay. But if you have a table, the poskim say that is okay. Clear on that point? We're good? Okay. Yes.
I missed the plant with the hole. Are you talking about outside or inside?
Inside.
Everywhere.
Oh.
Do not move plants that have holes.
So even indoors, like if it's on your floor?
Yes.
Because it's
Yes.
like there's nothing to be rooted in. Okay.
Still.
So you can't pick it up and you can't.
Shouldn't move it on Shabbat.
Can't move it
Yeah.
regardless of where.
Right. Plants with holes. Okay. Now. Okay, but if let's say you threw the apple core onto some place that will not grow, for example, desert sand, right? Or you threw it somewhere that it's not going to grow, then you wouldn't have this problem. Okay, let's continue. Very important stuff. What happens if you have flowers? Can you put flowers in water on Shabbat? Okay, so the answer is like this. The flowers depend on whether or not, see, there's two types of things we need to talk about. There's something which we call the atzeh besamim, and there's something called the isbeh besamim. Like for example, there are two brachot that we say on besamim, on smelling vegetation. Isbeh besamim is something like nana, something that's an herb that smells nice. Then there's atzeh besamim. Atzeh besamim is something that it has like a long branch, a stem that's solid and hard. For example, hadassim are atzeh besamim. Flowers are what we would call atzeh besamim. There's a difference between the two. Atzeh besamim, they don't grow when you put them in water. Okay? Isbeh besamim do. So you can't put, let's say, nana in water on Shabbat because it actually continues to grow. It's a problem. Atzeh besamim, though, they don't grow. However, you cannot put them for the first time in water on Shabbat. So what that would mean is, let's say you have hadassim. If they were there before Shabbat in the water, everybody agrees that you can put them back in the water on Shabbat. No problem. They were there before, you want to put them back, no problem. Can you put them in for the first time? That is a machloket. Okay? But if they were already there before Shabbat, there's no question the atzeh besamim, like hadassim, flowers, you can put them back in, but flowers have a condition. If the flowers are still closed, and that means that when you put them back in, the flowers will open, so then you cannot put them back in on Shabbat. Okay? So that means that, let's say flowers that are already open that you want to, so you definitely move it, let's say off the table, move it here, move it there, it's not considered muktzeh. But let's say you took out a rose and you want to put it back. Can you put it back? Well, it depends. Is the rose open or is the rose closed? If it's closed, the answer is no. If it's open, no problem.
If you want to change the water for the flowers,
So that's no good.
oh, you can't do
That's
that.
no good because now you're
If the water is not as
you're doing it in
clean,
order to
right?
keep it healthy and growing. So that would be aiding in the for helping the plant. That's no good. Yeah.
So what is that considered? If you do that, what is that considered? You doing?
It's I don't know if it's the right, but it's something that you shouldn't do on Shabbat. Yeah.
What if some water spilled out and you wanted to add more? So there's still water in there. Can you add a little bit more to it?
Don't add. It's all we're talking about the same water from before Shabbat.
Oh.
Same water.
Don't touch it.
Yeah.
And if your kid takes the flower out of the pot, you could put it back in.
Depending on whether
If
it's
it's
open or
open?
not. Yeah. If it's open, yes. If it's
What if
closed,
some are open and some aren't?
so put the ones that are open, not the ones that are not. Yes.
Can you repeat what's it's very what's I'd say it's very is
Isbei are things like nana, like herbs.
and that's a
Rose
problem.
It's
And that's
No. Like literal herbs. Like you know, how nana is like leaves.
Yeah.
It grows in the ground. But I'd say are things that have long branches. Branches like you know, like roses, cloves are I'd say besamim, flowers, hadassim are I'd say besamim, stuff like that.
flowers are it's
No, I'd say flowers are I'd say.
So
Jasmine.
Jasmine.
I don't remember which one that was. I have to look it up. Okay.
I just
Yes.
confused about the water thing. You're saying you can't put the flowers in water for the first time on Shabbat. So if someone brings you flowers for Shabbat and it's Shabbat already, you can't put that in. When would be a second?
So
Like,
so
can't use-
so
They were for sure.
the thing is like this.
You had flowers in the
So I'll tell you, Chacham Ovadia held that when it's Atzei Besamim. So look, the answer is it's a machloket between the Mishnah Berurah and Chacham Ovadia. Mishnah Berurah held you cannot. Chacham Ovadia held that if it's Atzei Besamim, even if it wasn't in water before Shabbat, you're allowed to put it in on Shabbat.
Even if the roses are open?
No, not if the roses are open. No, not if they're open. If they're if the roses are already open, that's what I'm talking about. Not if the roses are closed.
The roses always, open.
Well,
Roses always continue to open until the petals are falling off, so it's like seeds.
I think the idea is if they are already like, bloom basically. If they're already open. I don't know if they probably continue opening, but that's the language the poskim use. If they're open, then you could put them in. So Chacham Ovadia held that you could put Atzei Besamim into the water even if they weren't there before Shabbat. So if you're stuck and you need a heter to rely on, you have a heter. But I'm just trying to point out, ideally, if you can, just make sure they're there before Shabbat. You avoid all questions. So we had a couple of questions here. Yes.
So he said you could change the water?
He said you could put them in water for the first time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I keep my cilantro and other greens in water.
Okay.
So would there be issues that I might come up with? Like if I take it all out and I take some, like I pluck some off and I put it back in the water, or do I need to keep it in the water or can I not use it at all? if it's in
Cilantro,
water?
I don't think I think cilantro is something you can't put in water for the first time. So you would be allowed to, let's say, I don't even know if you could do that. No, you see, the problem is that if it's still growing, then you taking it out is actually uprooting it,
Oh my gosh.
right?
I
So
do
that's a
that.
problem.
I
You
do
shouldn't
all
do
the
that.
time.
What about checking
Yeah.
for bugs?
That's a different issue. That you gotta do before Shabbat.
What?
But usually, for the most part, that's the general idea. No, you could check it like this, but you can
So
check
in
it like
general,
just
you
looking.
can't pluck any of these. Let's say
What?
nana is sitting in a vase of water. You can't pull some off a
Right,
bunch. You
right.
just take it whole out.
Yes.
And then you
Smell
place it
it.
back in whole.
No, you
Not
can't. You
plunged
can't take it out.
No, I meant, no. Okay, fine. No. So I got confused because she was saying, can you pluck some out
Yeah.
of fresh? Okay, no.
Yeah.
I can't touch it. I can't touch
No.
it if it's in
Why
water.
not?
Take it out of the water.
If it's still growing, then
if
taking
it's
it
still
out is
growing.
uprooting.
Okay.
Which no, but they're always still growing. That's the thing.
What
That's the
about
problem with
washing?
nana. What?
You're washing it.
Even
It
if
helps it
it's
to grow. It
uprooted?
helps it to continue growing.
Even
Yeah.
if it's uprooted?
So isbei besamim, the poskim specifically say the only heter over here is with atzei besamim, with the ones that have a strong.
You're not
stem.
putting it in the water for the first time. In the flower store, they're all in water already. They're called.
Yeah, But I'm saying,
She just- something-
the point is that when, what the Mishnah Berurah is saying is that when Shabbat came in, they were already in water. That's the point. In other words, as far as Melacha is concerned, it was already done before Shabbat.
Okay.
If you're putting it in now on Shabbat, he holds the problem. But Chamadah held that you're allowed even if it wasn't in there before Shabbat. So it's important to be aware of this
wait a
heter.
second question, if I forgot to wash my cilantro, parsley, whatever, I forgot to wash them.
Yeah,
And I need a little piece for my salad,
yeah.
I cannot wash it.
Why are you washing? Just to clean it?
Yeah, I wanna eat, I
eat it.
forgot
That's
I need a
okay,
little
that's
piece
okay,
of it.
that's
Oh,
okay. What? To clean it, just so that it should be clean,
Yeah.
right?
No,
Yeah,
but you have
that's
to
okay.
No, you
What?
have to check the
You're saying you want to make it bug free,
yes.
or you just want to wash it?
You wash it, usually parsley doesn't have.
So there's a whole question about washing vegetables on Shabbat, which I don't want to get into right now. If you could do that for getting rid of bugs or not, let's avoid that for now. We'll continue with
We could
this,
take a piece
with
and
where we're going.
wash it.
What?
We could take a piece and like wash it.
Well,
with your
we'll
hand.
get to that when we get to that. B'ezras Hashem. Let's hold off on that for now. Let's continue with Zorea. Let's talk about some common cases that come up. We'll get to.
Are you
Well-
allowed to move your vase, the flowers in it?
Yes.
Because it's in the middle
Yes,
of the-
yes,
the-
yes, 100%. Yes, yes.
Except for the jasmine plant, are we allowed to like touch the flowers on Shabbat?
And what are you
And
doing
what
with
if
it?
they fall off, let's smell them?
You can go up to it and smell it. Question if something which is attached is muktzah or not.
Right.
So better just, go up to it and smell
But you
it.
can't really touch it.
I don't think so, because you'd be moving it. That'd be a muktzah problem, as far as I remember. Okay, now. Outdoor furniture. Okay, person goes outside. They've got outdoor furniture. It was raining yesterday. Okay. And now it's dry, but there's still a big puddle of water on your chair, on your outdoor sofa, on your table, on whatever it is, and you want to sit down outside, right? So naturally, you go to the table and you go, spill all the water off, right? So you're spilling all the water onto the grass. Can't do that on Shabbat. You're just making it grow. Another case, person has a sukkah. It was raining on Sukkot, and they took this beautiful big tarp, and the tarp now has a huge puddle of water on top. Or maybe the guy has a tent and the tent was sitting in water for a while, and now the guy wants to push the water off the tent. So you have to be concerned if it's dry now that it's, let's say it rained last night, now this morning it's all dry, and you're pushing water onto the grass, that's a problem. You can't do that on Shabbat because that's helping the grass to grow. Now, what do you do? Let's say in that case of Sukkot, what is a possible solution? So first of all, the answer is you have to know whether or not right now it's dry on the floor. So let's say it's totally dry. So then you have a problem. But let's say it just rained 10 minutes ago, right? Or it just rained an hour ago, and the water is still very fresh in the ground. The ground is saturated with water. So now for you to spill the outdoor furniture is not a problem because you're not accomplishing anything. You're not helping it to grow. It's already saturated with water anyway. So therefore you would be allowed to take that table and spill it and get all the water off, no problem.
What if it drizzles only then? Can you assume that it's saturated with water or?
So if it's a light drizzle, then probably you shouldn't do it. But if it's if it was raining, then you don't have a problem. Okay. Now, what happens if you need to eat in the sukkah? We come out. It's the morning time. Last night, Baruch Hashem, it rained, it poured, but right now it's totally dry, and I'm not allowed to take this tarp or this table and spill the water onto the ground. What do? We have to eat in the sukkah. So the answer is you could do something like this. You could take, let's say, one of those plastic tablecloth covers or some plastic like this. And what you could do is you could put it on the ground on the side that you're going to spill the water onto, and you could spill it onto the plastic. And if you spill it onto the plastic and then it kind of drips off to the side, that already is something else. That's already what we would call a grama. It's a different, with a few other factors that would make it okay. Clear? All right, so you would put something on the ground, spill it onto that. If it then drips off, that's a different question.
All the time.
Is it what?
There is a space that is not covered and the water is gonna go there, it's fine.
No, cover the space, meaning put it on that spot that it's gonna land on this.
Yeah, but some water is gonna land on the part that is not covered.
There's no problem.
So as long as it's landing over here, even if it spills off, it's okay. All right, clear? Yes.
Is Shabbat and Sukkot different for this?
No,
Like with
it's the same
Melacha,
rule.
It's the same rule.
As far as Zorea is concerned, it's the same rule.
If it's on, if Shabbat and Sukkot are not together,
Same
it's the
thing.
same thing.
Same thing.
Can
yeah.
you pour it down like a sewer drain thing?
Sure.
Just as long as it's not on the grass.
Right. If it's on, let's say your sukkah is on the cement, you wouldn't have this problem at all because it's cement. Talking about when it's on grass. Yes.
What if it's weeds in between the stones?
That's a nice question. So then cover it. Yeah.
Cover.
Cover the thing with this plastic, whatever tablecloth. Yeah. Yes.
So let's say you're at the park and you swing set and you don't have plastic or anything and it's like soaking wet from the night before.
Yeah.
But it's not for you, it's for the kids to play with. You're not allowed to do it anyway.
No, if it's soaking wet, then
But
you.
the floor isn't.
Oh, the floor is
It's
not.
like there's like a puddle
Yeah.
on the swing or on the.
Puddle
side.
on the swing, and right now the grass is dry.
Yeah.
So then don't spill it on the ground because you would not be allowed to do that because then
Yeah, but you can't
because you're helping the grass to grow.
Can you, the kids can do it probably either. Can you wipe it with a towel or something? Or like a napkin, like paper towels?
Yeah,
Can
you could do
put on
that. You could do that. You could dry it,
top?
right? Hi.
You could empty a tarp of water in the puddle if the puddle is on grass.
You could empty the tarp onto if let's say the grass is already saturated, you could empty it onto the grass. If the grass is not saturated, so the suggestion is put some kind of plastic or maybe a different tarp on the ground and have it fall onto that. And then whatever spills off,
I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about concrete floor, you're talking about like grass.
yeah. Because concrete floor, you don't have the problem. Spill it on the concrete. Who cares? Nothing's happening. Yeah.
So drying with a towel or bounty, let's say, we're not talking about like such an extreme form of puddle. Let's say like kids still put the drink on the table.
Yeah.
What's the like happens all the time? You're supposed to take a bounce. What I do is I don't know if I'm doing it the right way, but I kind of just let the bounty soak up. Like,
Yeah.
because it's like
It's good.
causing the bounty to squeeze and then you're
It's okay. The bounty goes straight in the garbage. There's no concern you're gonna squeeze it out. So you're good.
allowed to like pat it or you just let it
Just
go.
take it, scoop it, and throw it out.
You're not doing any squeezing in that either?
Don't squeeze it out. Yeah. Yeah. Just
No,
make sure you don't like
Not
just grab it.
intentionally squeezing, but like
Yeah.
you-
No, you could get it nice and
you
saturated.
try something.
Get it nice, full, saturated, and just throw it out. Don't squeeze it. Just fill it up and chuck it. That's it.
But bounty's not full.
It's okay.
So it can be squeezed.
It can be squeezed, but don't squeeze it.
No, I know, but I'm saying if you're worried about squeezing, like,
It could be squeezed.
like, it's okay.
Bounty is good because you're not gonna squeeze it. It's not like a towel that you wanna wring it out and then you need space for more water. So then you go back and it's going straight in the garbage. That's why it's okay. Like if let's say you wanted to use a towel, for example, that would be a different question because a towel is something that you normally wring out, right? And now you want to go back and scoop up more with it, right? So if it's a spill that's very, very big, that the towel will not be enough. You need to get some of it out and then go back for more. That's a problem because that's a concern for squeezing. But the bounty, you don't have that concern. You just scoop it up and chuck it.
What do you do with the towel afterwards?
When you use a
Let's say
towel.
you clean up with a huge mess. What do you do with the towel?
So that's the thing. So you really shouldn't use the towel in the first place because the towel is something that you wring out. So that's why towels are different. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay. So let's keep with the program. So let's make sure that didn't miss anything over here. So we said tomato seeds, they fell on the floor. Don't let the tomato seeds fall on the floor if it's outside because that would be Zorea. Like another example. It's not just apples, it could be anything that grows. Let's say your pepper seeds or whatever it may be. Okay, very good.
Even in the winter?
No, if it's in the winter, it's not growing. So then you wouldn't have this problem. Okay. All right, I think we covered what we need to cover for today. I think we're good. Unless if we have any questions, we can take the questions. But again, these are things that come up. Like I said, with Sukkot and stuff outside, or if you have an event outside, if you want to sit down on the chair, let's say on the grass, and you know it's going to sink in the ground, there are those that are lenient, and there are reasons for that. Yeah.
I know this is not from today. I tried to ask you last week, but
Okay. Sorry.
warming up a baby bottle,
Okay.
it's something that I need to know. Can
All
I,
right. So
so
stop over here.
are
Yeah.
we able